Hey guys, welcome back to Time Under Tension. This is episode 11, and we're going to switch it up a little bit this week. In previous weeks, we kind of come in with a topic and a little bit of a trajectory as to where we're going. And today we're going to just totally wing it. But I'm excited. I think this is going to be a great episode and opportunity to kind of go over what we've been learning individually. And we just went on a trip, so it created some interesting opportunities to grow, and I would love to discuss that more and kind of take the time to review. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm excited for this episode because I think there's a lot of really cool parts to it, and it allows for both of us to kind of share our own personal journeys in a shared journey that can kind of also speak to just how someone and another person can be doing the exact same thing and having two completely separate experiences within it.
Yeah, and the value of having that support, because a vacation's fun, right? But there's like a lot of stressors associated with it. And I think with just how you and I are and how we're constantly focused on growing and learning and challenging ourselves, like something like a vacation can be a massive opportunity for growth as well. So it becomes a little bit challenging on top of it also being fun.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of my main takeaways was that one of the biggest things I think I took away from the trip was that when you're placed in a completely different environment and you don't have any kind of normalcy for your life, or just normal places you're used to going that are you didn't really realize were safe places, or things that you can do that you would normally do in your daily routine that actually level you out in terms of your stress level or your anxiety. Being in a different environment with none of those things and having to then have whether it's relationship challenges or personal challenges come up in that space, you're really left with just your being and yourself and whatever it is that's coming up. That allows for a much more clear it allows for a lot more clarity in the areas that are still living within that need a little bit more awareness around, or a little bit more energy focused on it, in terms of being able to really come to a place where they don't no longer serve as taking the power away from you.
Yeah, I think I got a little taste of that when I moved here because I was displaced from a lot of things that I tied my identity to. And so I was kind of left with, all right, here I am in the raw form without all these safety net labels that I like to stick around because that's how I've been able to gauge my boundaries between myself and the environment. And this was, I think, an even better opportunity to do so because I feel like I've grown so much since that time. And at that time, I felt like I was thrown into it and just had like a bit of an identity crisis as to, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I making the choices that I'm making? Who am I now that I'm not in this social sphere that's familiar to me? Whereas this trip was like within a time frame in which I've done a lot of self-work and felt prepared to handle it, but still had to face those challenges again and kind of recognize also how I've grown in my ability to stay secure within myself and make decisions out of like a core foundation of values versus feeling like every moment I'm shifting.
Yeah, I think that is great. Can you give an example of an area that maybe you've grown in at home, and this trip exposed that there is actually a little bit more work that you need to be doing in a particular area that you maybe thought you had a better grasp on?
Yeah. So a major thing, a topic daily, I think, while we were gone was food, diet, body image. And it, for me, it more so centered around food. I wasn't feeling as concerned about body image consistently. It was a lot of anxiety that came up around the diet and the fact that, I shifted a week or so before off of a meal plan to intuitive eating. But even the start of that was, okay, I'm intuitively eating, but I'm still kind of tracking my food because I'd like to know about how much I'm taking in. And then I let go of that a little bit, but I was still eating pretty much the same things. So I knew about how much I was taking in. And then going on this trip, it's like, all right, you eat what's available, you're at buffets, you're eating out, there's things in the food that you don't really know, you're not eating on your own schedule. So you're eating when you can. And all of that was just, it revealed to me how much anxiety I have still around food. And even though I made massive steps from going from solely meal plan based diet to making decisions more intuitively and not focusing on the numbers, being put in that situation where I felt even less control definitely revealed to me like how much more work I need to do in this area.
Yeah. I Do you mind if I share my kind of experience with that? I think mine's a little bit different. And because I also, followed your lead with intuitive eating and challenged myself in that area as well. What I realized more was how much I let go of all of the rules that I have at home around food when I'm on vacation. Like it's almost this excuse to not have any rules. And I didn't really realize that that was something that I necessarily did. And what I found in that was I was now able to challenge my rules. So instead of just letting go of them, I was like, well, why do I have them? And, you know, we got in a conversation at one of the lunches around how the bread in Spain is different than the bread here in the United States. And, it just in itself having this conversation about how it's made and how there aren't as many preservatives and all those things in it, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, then bread's okay. And in my head, and it's just so strange because I didn't really realize how many rules that I have in my own mind or things I believe to be true about things like, olive oil that's like literally just being spread on something, or bread, stuff like that that I would normally hear say were bad foods in my mind. Don't eat them, having that fear that if I eat them I'm going to be heavier by however many pounds the next day. And just understanding that this trip allowed me to remove any rules that I had and just start intuitively eating what I thought would taste good. Just showed me, it allowed the part of me that feels all that fear around the rules, that needs those rules, that rules aren't necessary. And my body's going, like, I need to just be way more aware of how my body feels after I eat something, because that's really the rule, is being able to feel how you feel after you eat a meal. Did it set well? Do I feel more energized? Do I feel full and good, or am I nauseous? And things like that were all of a sudden the things I was more aware of versus, is this a good or bad food to be eating? And I think that's a positive of what happened, but also something I really realized is that you keep me from having a binge. When I rely still on the fact that you're going to be around, and I know myself that I would never allow a binge to happen with you around, that I saw how there were certain situations where if you weren't there, I would probably not have self-control in the moment. And being able to, the good I tried to take out of that was, okay, well, what are the things that are leading me to this place? Am I tired? Have I not eaten much in the day? to make sure I'm staying full? Or, am I emotionally struggling with something right now? Am I feeling insecure? Like, what is it that's making me feel like I need to run to food? And I think that was just, being able to shift my perspective and see how I'm still struggling with, running to food as a safety net when I'm emotionally not feeling stable, or I'm, not prioritizing sleep, or whatever it is, that food is still this thing that my body relies on for safety when I'm, in a tough situation. And having, like, relying on someone else being in my presence is something that I want to really start to work on more, not having to need to be around you, because it happened on the plane. I told you this, and I know this is getting a little long, but the plane ride there, we didn't sit next to each other. And I struggled. Because the Wi-Fi wasn't working. There was no TV, 7 hours with my own self. And that's an area that I know I don't feel safe in 100% yet, because I haven't done that deeper work of when I am truly by myself. I'm working on it now. I've noticed now that I know that I don't feel safe necessarily with myself at night, that when I'm by myself on a plane for 7 hours with no distractions, I'm all of a sudden just like really like restless and anxious. And the only thing that I felt no control. I felt like the only thing I could get myself to calm down with was eating every 2 hours or whatever I really had. And I sort of had this like, wow, I'm losing control right now. I'm running to food and I need to do it. And it was something I had to give myself some grace with, but it was also like super challenging. And it made me feel like I was taking steps back, when I don't necessarily think that's the case, because I was aware the whole time and was able to work through some of that.
Yeah. And I think that going through things like that and not necessarily running back to the structure, but having to stay in that environment for an entire week, for me, that was a good enough time frame to really work through some of these things without just falling back in old patterns. Like, one thing I've seen with myself is when I feel stress or I feel resistance towards something that I know that I need to do, but I am not in a place where I'm feeling very willing to do it, my first response is to turn to food. And for me, that doesn't always mean eating. It can mean planning or cooking or watching food videos. And to a degree, I enjoy that stuff. I think I'm pretty passionate about that, but I have to be careful, because if I start to try to apply structure to my life through control of my diet, because I feel out of control in other areas or don't feel like I have a grasp on my level of execution in other areas of life, I'm not really addressing the main issue. Like, if I'm avoiding something that I need to be doing by being productive, or productive procrastination, as I call it, yeah, I might be meal prepping for us, or, planning my diet or whatever, but I'm actually really just avoiding what it is that I need to be doing. So being in that environment where it was like, hey, you still don't have the freedom to be on a meal plan right now. You can't really count calories right now, because you're like, I just didn't have control. I didn't really know much about the food that we were eating. It gave me the training grounds to kind of work through these issues and be like, all right, I can't rely on those old patterns. Like, when I need alone time, I need to be quiet and I need to be by myself. Like, we're on a bus ride with a ton of people and I'm an introvert. I can't run home and say I don't feel good, or, focus on my diet or obsess about food. I need to take the time that I need to be quiet and be alone and recharge, because that's really the core issue, is needing to recharge, needing to feel some sort of structure. And that structure is something that only we can apply. It can't really be uh, based on some external form of structure like a meal plan.
Yeah, I think training grounds is a great way to frame that, for sure. I feel like that kind of happened with our relationship as well. It's like we got put back on the training grounds again. in just some of the areas of our relationship, because we haven't spent that much time together in a long time. And when you're getting to this normalcy of, I'm at the office for however many hours in the day, and you have, the house to yourself, and you're doing your work, and we flow, and then, we do a really nice job of not texting, because we know that when we get home at night, we just catch up on everything and we spend our time together. But when, we can almost kind of protect that period of time at night where, okay, if I had something happen to me in the day, I can work through it and process it, and then process out loud with you in the time allotted. It's like I have some preparation time to enter into a space with you. Whereas on this vacation, it was like we were always together. So anytime something started to happen, I didn't have the time to kind of like let it settle before I knew I was going to be in your presence. It's like, no, I'm going through this and you're right there. And I love you. And usually, when things happen, you take things out on the people you love, because, it just tends to, or I guess personally for me, that's what happens, is I tend to get, a little snippy or whatever, or, not able to have more self-control over my emotions. And being in a space where you were always around and seeing that come out was super reflective for me, just knowing that, yeah, wow, okay, so, there are still some things that I do, and it doesn't even need to be in romantic relationships. It can be with any relationship, with my boss or, the players. If I'm not understanding that things are going to come up and I have to take them for what they are and not identify so strongly with them in the moment. Otherwise, I'm going to end up acting a way that I really regret. And as much of that's going to still happen. I'm not saying I'm going to be perfect, but having those things kind of happen back to back in days, or, kind of reverting back to this feeling that I get when I'm insecure in the relationship, that I'm really focused on, am I doing everything right? What am I doing wrong? Like I just revert back completely to how I was in all of my relationships before, when that was something that I worked so hard on and have really grown in here in this environment. That just kind of seeing that, there are still some parts of me that are a little bit insecure that I need to keep working on, and making sure I'm voicing them and seeing how they come up in different situations really was helpful.
Yeah. So I've been in bodybuilding for a while, right? And so I've trained the same way for a long time, and I've gotten to kind of lean on my pride of like, yeah, I'm strong, like I can lift this or do this. And lately I've been kind of challenging more skills, and man, it is humbling to try to sprint or to get under a bar and back squat and realize just how difficult it is. Like I was strong in that context, but if I want to be functionally active and fit, I need to be agile enough to develop skills and to be flexible in certain areas. And I think that that's similar to what we've been doing. We've had this structured life at home, like you said, like a routine where it's like, all right, I get through my day, I have this time to myself, I process my feelings, I get time with you, like I'm checking all those boxes every day. But when you're in a situation like where you're on vacation, or say you're living with roommates, or you're living with family members, or you're in college and there's just things you can't control, you have to be really intentional about establishing that balance. And it may not be a daily balance yet. It may be like, okay, I know today is going to be a day of a 12-hour shift. So tomorrow I better set aside a good amount of time to recharge. Like you need to create that balance throughout the week. And I think this was a great opportunity to really hone into what we needed and to learn how to ask each other for what we needed, or even grant ourselves permission to take what we needed and to be able to separate what we were feeling about the other person. Like I was projecting things onto you and then feeling like you were upset about things. And then I would start to spiral because of that. And it was to be like, to take the time to stop and say, okay, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I interpret when you do this. What is your perspective? And then figuring out what the actual truth is with that, because you come together with two completely different worldviews, as any two people will have, because your backgrounds are so different. And then you add all these stressors externally where it's like you don't have your routine, you're not getting to work out, which we didn't get to do. And that's a massive stress relief for both of us. We were around a ton of people with high emotions. You were working, so there was that dynamic. And then it's like, and we're around each other in this context the whole time. And we have to figure out what we need and know when to ask for it and know when we're overstepping our boundaries into each other's boundaries. And it was a massive challenge, but I think it was super helpful because it was like that cross training of like, all right, now we've taken the time to build these skills in a very controlled environment. Here you are in the real world now. What is this going to look like?
Yeah. I think setting healthy boundaries is, sometimes you might think that you don't need to do that with your significant other. And it's totally something that is like absolutely necessary. You have to protect your energy and understand that it's a give and take and an opportunity to grow with each other. I think this whole experience of travel really taught me surrender as well, because our entire itinerary was planned for us. It's like, I had this thought today as I was thinking about this conversation, like that's kind of how life is. God has this schedule for us, essentially. If we are in full alignment with him, then there's always a next step, and he's guiding our path for us. And, thinking about some of the times I had a lot of resistance to things that ended up being these incredible experiences. I was like, one morning I was like, oh my gosh, like we were out till whatever time, and now we got to get up and we got this hour bus ride. And then, sometimes you get in that space, and it ended up being this tour that we went up to the top of this incredible like roundabout, end up seeing the entire city. And that was one of my favorite parts of the entire trip. And I was like, an hour on the bus, and we're going to be there. It's in the morning, and then we go back, and then we're coaching and we're playing. And it's like, yeah, sometimes we feel like that with some of the things that are actually going to be our favorite part of life. And so I just felt like that was something that also, just based on what you're saying about, the structure and the routine and cross training and understanding that our emotions are important tools, but not identifying with them, and knowing that there's always going to be opportunity to choose to have this perspective of this, what am I going to be able to experience today? This is going to be a brand new place I've never been in my life, with a bunch of people who I call family. And all right, God, show me some cool stuff today. Like everybody totally has the choice to choose that perspective, as hard as it is. Sometimes, I mean, having to release that control and completely surrender to someone else's itinerary taught me that perspective is a choice of mine. And I thought that was cool as well.
And with that, like we had a week of incredible experiences. Like I feel like I learned more about myself. I learned a lot about the world. I was able to connect with so many people in 7 days, like more than I had in the month leading up to that. And I think that says a lot about the value of saying yes, and the value of openness to experience, and the value of seeing the positive. We started this trip as
I was just thinking that. I sent that to you.
Received. We started this trip and you were sick with a probably sinus infection, and your ears were about to explode. And I did not sleep. Like the night before we were supposed to fly out, I just started like spiraling and worrying about the flight and just feeling really stressed about the trip. And it just hit me at like 3 in the morning, which if any of you spiral at night, it's always 3 in the morning. I don't know what that's about, but we got up and we just decided, all right, we're gonna do this. Like, let's just take a step. We both went to the gym. We took the time to decide whether or not we were going to go. And even though we were questioning it, I said, like, all we can do is take a step and God will guide the next step. So let's just do it. Like, let's just go and know that he's going to guide our journey from there. Like, that's all you have to do is move. You don't even have to know where half the time. Just make a move. If you don't know, do something. And so we got on the bus, we rode out to Raleigh Airport, which was a couple hours away. And then we get there and our flight is canceled. And we have this whole team, all the volleyball players and then the parents. And we're just at this airport, and the head coach is just like working the counter trying to get this flight rearranged. And it's just a mess. We have this massive group, and we end up being at this airport for like 6 hours, and there's nothing to do there. There's like a couple vending machines, and there's some high energy parents, and it's just like I felt like, why did we do this? Like, I had a dream, I had a vision, I knew this wasn't supposed to happen, but we kind of laughed about it because it was like, yep, God guided the next step. We both like had a hunch, but we knew we just needed to be faithful in it. And then from there, I felt like I was able to surrender so much more of the trip because of that starting point. And it worked out because we didn't leave for a couple days. You were able to get a lot better. I had a lot more peace about the trip going into it. And then it was like, all right, this was always God's trip. We never had the itinerary. We just think we do most of the time. And it just was able to, for me, it allowed me to surrender to what was and kind of embrace the unknown of the trip, which is very unnatural for me in my controlling nature.
So good. That was totally, I just feel like that was absolutely what I was going to say about the beginning of the trip. I think I had a different perspective because I went into it, you know, this is an opportunity for me to coach this team with in a foreign country against, some really high level teams. And so I'm excited, but I have had some trauma experience with my ears on a plane, like that. I was fearful. I was so freaked out. I thought my head was going to explode. Literally, that was the fear. And when we were getting there, I was finally found like this routine of medicine, but I was still like so worried about my ears. So for me, it was like when everything kind of started happening, I was like, oh, God's got me right now. Like I was like, he's got me. Like this is wow. Like I just needed to lean into that fear and just trust that I had enough strength for today. And clearly I didn't have the strength. My ears didn't. So he was like, we'll wait a couple of days. But I feel like my perspective was like, thank you. Like I got to feel like I took a step, like you said, and I felt like I could do it because you were there with me. But God will always, if you take a step, there's always a plan. You're right. It was always his trip. And I just think that the beginning really showed me like he will do whatever it is that fits his greater plan, but he also knows the strength that you have in the day. And if you're really worried, and me too, he's like, regardless of what the point was, we each got a really cool lesson and experience with God out of it.
So, with everything that you learned in this trip, did you come home with a different perspective or a renewed focus towards anything you needed to do moving forward?
Yeah, I felt like I got immense clarity on what my purpose is in the world. And I'm done not acting on that. So really what I felt was I see just enough to take the next step. And God showed me a lot of clarity in the purpose that I have in the world. And I haven't been an active participant in moving forward. Like you're saying, I have been staying still, and knowing that my purpose was there. But if I didn't have the details, I didn't know how to move. And now it's like, now I got clarity and I don't need to know the details. I just need to start moving. And that to me has helped me feel fulfilled, empowered. I've done a ton of trauma work that's really allowed me to see, you know, that I am not anything besides who I am. And God is the one that defines me.
That's huge. I would challenge you guys, like, if you haven't put yourself in a situation, you don't necessarily have to travel to a different country, but put yourself in an uncomfortable situation for a week and just embrace it and really dig into who you are and address the things that come up without judgment, just as an observer, and think, okay, what is this that's coming up for me right now? What is the deeper need here? What is the lesson here? And grow from it, because I think sometimes we get so caught up in, I do, and I like my efficient process, and I can get so much done if I'm on this routine where I get up at this time and do this and check these boxes, and I have a block for this work and a block for this work, and I, like, have everything on this schedule, and it just doesn't leave room for God to work. I mean, he will always work through it, but I just think that sometimes we limit our capacity to understand the way that he's working in our lives when we program ourselves like robots. And to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation and to be able to come out of it even stronger than before and more deeply rooted in who you are is absolutely, like, untradeable. It's an incredible experience, and I think that we should all hold ourselves accountable to putting ourselves in those situations consistently.
Great. Do you have anything you want to add as something you brought home in the last couple of minutes we have here?
Yeah, I think similarly, I think just taking that step and realizing, like, I don't need to know all the details, because even if I try to plan ahead and project what could happen, I'm rarely ever right, because I'm just basing it on some limited experiences in my past. And so it's like, why not just embrace it and take a step and then let him lead the next step and just focus on being faithful in the moment. So just gonna try to embrace some new pursuits, continuing forward with intuitive eating, but kind of shifted to plant-based, which has been really fun. And it's been awesome to just feel so much more energized and better in my body than I have in a very, very long time. Slowly letting go of some of my insecurities around body image, which is a really cool side effect to all that. Tonight, I'm going to jujitsu, so kind of branching out of my comfort zone, uh, doing things that I'm probably not very good at, but kind of feel called to do. And then definitely want to continue expanding what work looks like for me, although I haven't quite figured that out yet, or what step to take. I know that that's going to be an exciting journey in the next few weeks to come.
So I feel blessed to do it next to you.
Yes, we worked through a lot in Spain, so I feel like we came back stronger and, like, with a better understanding of each other, which was pretty exciting. As hard as it was, I think it was worth it.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So I hope you guys enjoyed the update. We're going to be back next week with an actual topic, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about intuition and what that looks like and how to tap into yours. So please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know below what you guys like to see or anything that you'd like to hear more about, and we will catch you next time.